Ethan Parker had lived a quiet, steady life in his small Oregon home. The kind of life where mornings smelled like fresh coffee and evenings ended with soft conversations and calm routines. He and Mia had been married for nearly a decade long, enough for comfort to replace excitement and habit to replace surprise. Ethan always believed that comfort meant safety and the routines meant love was stable. He never imagined anything could shake that simple belief, not until one rainy Thursday night, when everything shifted in a single, unexpected moment. The storm outside was heavy, rain tapping on the windows while thunder rolled far away. Ethan sat at the dining table, finishing a work email, while Mia cooked dinner with music playing quietly in the background. It was an ordinary evening, peaceful and familiar. But then Mia's phone lit up on the counter, buzzing against the wood. Ethan didn't look at it intentionally. His eyes just landed on the screen because the light was bright in the dim kitchen. And in those 2 seconds, Ethan's steady world tilted. The message preview was short, but it hit him like cold water. "I miss you. When can we talk alone?" His breath caught. He didn't blink. He didn't even move at first. His mind simply froze, trying to understand if he had read the words correctly. They felt unbelievable, like a mistake or a sentence meant for someone else's life. But it was there, clear and real, and Mia's name was on the phone. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something sharp in his chest, not anger, not heartbreak, but fear. A quiet, gentle fear that slipped into him before he could stop it. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't walk toward it. He didn't say Mia's name. Instead, he sat completely still, replaying the message in his mind, hoping it would make sense the second time. But it didn't. Every part of him wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, that maybe it was about work or a friend going through something, but the words didn't sound like that. They sounded personal. They sounded close. They sounded like someone reaching out in a way Ethan hadn't reached out in a long time. Mia turned around to check on dinner, smiling at him the way she always did, warm and unaware. "Everything okay?" she asked lightly, stirring the pot as if nothing in their world had changed. And Ethan nodded, even though his heart felt strangely heavy. He didn't know how to ask her about the message when he wasn't even sure what it meant. He didn't want to accuse her without knowing the truth. He didn't want to destroy the calm moment without understanding what he had seen. So he swallowed the fear and stayed silent. But his silence didn't make the feeling go away. As they ate dinner, Ethan watched her laugh at something silly on the TV. And he kept wondering how often her phone buzzed like that, how long the messages had been coming, who had written them, and why Mia had never mentioned anything. He wasn't someone who jumped to conclusions, but the worry began to spread through him, settling into every thought. Small questions started building inside him, questions he had never asked before. Not because he didn't care, but because he always trusted. After dinner, Mia went to take a shower, humming softly as she walked past him. The sound should have comforted Ethan, the way it always did, but tonight it only made him feel confused. He stared at the spot where her phone had been, feeling the weight of the message pressing against his thoughts. He didn't know what the truth was, but he knew one thing clearly: something in their marriage had shifted. Even if he didn't understand how or why, when he went to bed, Ethan lay awake beside her, listening to the storm fading outside and the quiet rhythm of her breathing. He wanted to believe everything was fine, that the message was nothing. But he also knew that love didn't break in loud, explosive ways. Sometimes it cracked softly, in moments no one expected. And tonight felt like the beginning of a crack he could no longer ignore. As he stared at the ceiling in the dark, Ethan whispered to himself, barely audible, "What's happening to us?" It was a question he never imagined he would need to ask. But now, it echoed quietly in the silent room, marking the moment when his simple, steady life stopped feeling safe. And for the first time, he feared he might already be too late to understand the truth. The next morning, Ethan woke early, the storm gone, but leaving the world wet and cold. He watched the gray clouds drift over the pine trees outside, but his mind wasn't on the scenery. It kept returning to the message he had seen the night before. Couldn't stop thinking about it, and the more he tried, the heavier it felt. He noticed everything differently now. Mia moved through the kitchen quietly, humming as she brewed coffee, and Ethan suddenly realized how long it had been since he had really looked at her noticed. The small ways she smiled or the tension in her shoulders. He had taken her for granted in the comfortable rhythm of their life. And now every detail seemed charged with meaning. For 2 days, Ethan carried the message like a stone in his chest. Every time Mia's phone buzzed, his pulse quickened. He tried to focus on work, on emails, on small chores around the house, but his mind refused to cooperate. He watched Mia laugh at shows he had stopped noticing, watched her glance at her phone during breaks, and felt a growing distance he had never acknowledged before. The fear he had felt the night before had deepened into something more complicated. It wasn't anger yet, and it wasn't sadness. It was uncertainty. Something subtle but undeniable had shifted between them. Ethan tried to speak to Mia casually, testing the waters. "Mia, you seem a little distracted lately. Everything okay?" he asked while pouring himself coffee. She looked up, smiled warmly, and replied, "I'm fine, really. Just busy at work." Her eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of something unsaid. Ethan noticed it instantly. He knew her too well to miss the hesitation, the quiet pause before she forced her smile. That pause made him uneasy, and he realized he was seeing her differently now, like a stranger he thought he knew, but who held secrets he hadn't expected. Later, while Mia stepped into the shower, Ethan glanced at the phone she had left on the counter. It buzzed again, and this time the name on the screen caught him off guard. Aaron Blake. He froze. Aaron was not just any name, he was Mia's childhood friend, someone they both knew casually from college days. Ethan had never worried about him, thinking he was harmless. But now, with that message, Aaron seemed like an intruder he had never imagined could feel threatening. The name alone stirred feelings he didn't expect: jealousy, fear, and a quiet pain that made him ache in a place he didn't fully understand. Ethan remembered the old days when Aaron and Mia had been close, sharing secrets and dreams. He never imagined those friendships could grow into something complicated. He suddenly wondered how often Mia had spoken to Aaron lately, how often he had reached out, and why she hadn't mentioned it. He tried to reason with himself, telling himself she loved him, that nothing could happen between them. Yet the doubt had taken root, subtle but persistent. Every detail about her laughter, her small gestures, her longer phone calls, seemed different now, as if the message had changed the way he saw her completely. By the afternoon, Ethan felt restless. He walked through their home, checking the rooms, hearing the echoes of normal life that now seemed strange. He noticed how Mia had left a notebook on the table, scribbled with little reminders and plans. He wondered who she had been thinking about when she wrote them, and the thought hurt more than he expected. He didn't want to spy, didn't want to accuse, but his curiosity gnawed at him. It wasn't about distrust alone, it was about understanding. What had shifted between them? Why a simple message could make his life feel unsteady in a way he had never experienced before. That evening, Ethan watched Mia from the sofa as she sorted laundry. She hummed softly, completely unaware of his quiet observation. His chest tightened, not with anger, but with longing. Longing to reach her, to hold her, and to understand what had created the space growing between them. He suddenly realized he didn't just want answers about the message or Aaron. He wanted to reconnect with Mia, to find the warmth they had slowly lost to routine and silence. And yet, the fear lingered. What if reaching out came too late? What if she had already grown distant in ways he couldn't repair? Finally, Ethan resolved he could no longer wait. He had to speak to her. Not in anger, not in suspicion, but with honesty. That night, he prepared himself to ask the questions he had avoided for too long. The questions about love, attention, and the space between two people who once promised forever. And as he watched the snow begin to fall outside the window, Ethan knew that the coming conversation would either pull them closer or push them apart in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Saturday morning arrived with a crisp, clear sky, the snow from the previous night sparkling under the pale sun. Ethan woke early, feeling an unfamiliar mix of dread and determination. The message, the name, and the worry that had been gnawing at him for days were now impossible to ignore. He could no longer sit quietly and pretend he wasn't unsettled. He needed answers, not accusations, not blame, just truth. He knew Mia deserved the same honesty he planned to offer. And he also knew that ignoring the problem would only let it grow into something worse. Saturday morning arrived with a crisp, clear sky, the snow from the previous night sparkling under the pale sun. Ethan woke early, feeling an unfamiliar mix of dread and determination. The message, the name, and the worry that had been gnawing at him for days were now impossible to ignore. He could no longer sit quietly and pretend he wasn't unsettled. He needed answers, not accusations, not blame, just truth. He knew Mia deserved the same honesty he planned to offer. And he also knew that ignoring the problem would only let it grow into something worse. He found Mia in the kitchen, carefully arranging plates for breakfast. Her movements were quiet and careful, almost cautious, as if she could sense the tension building even before any words were spoken. Ethan approached and gently asked Mia, "Can we sit down and talk? I need to understand something." Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of nervousness passing across her face. For a moment, he thought she might retreat, brush it off, or deflect. But instead, she nodded and followed him to the porch. The air crisp and sharp, carrying the scent of fresh snow and pine. Ethan motioned for her to sit, and silence hung for a few seconds. The only sounds were the faint crunch of snow under a passing car and the soft wind rustling through the trees. Then, softly but firmly, he said, "I saw the messages. Mia, I know something is going on and I need to hear it from you." The words were careful, chosen with restraint, but their weight was heavy. Carrying the fear he had felt all week, Mia took a deep breath, her hands twisting together in her lap. "Ethan," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "it's not what you think." Ethan waited, his heart beating faster, knowing this was the moment everything could change. She looked down, gathering her courage. "Aaron reached out a few weeks ago. He went through a divorce, and he said he felt alone. I listened because he needed someone to talk to. I didn't know how to respond, so I answered him. That's all. I didn't cheat." Ethan's chest tightened, a mixture of relief and pain flooding him. Relief because there was no betrayal, no secret affair. Pain because her heart had wandered, even if just in thought, toward someone else. He could feel the vulnerability in her voice, the honesty shining through the small cracks of fear and hesitation. "You should have told me," he said quietly, not angry, but hurt. "I would have understood, even if it was just a friend." "I know," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I love you, Ethan. I forgot how to share things with you, like I used to. I got lost in listening to someone else and their sadness, and I didn't think about how it would make you feel." Her words struck him, not with anger, but with a quiet ache of understanding. She hadn't betrayed him with actions, but her mind and heart had briefly drifted. Ethan exhaled slowly, realizing that love wasn't perfect. It wasn't about flawless trust or unbroken attention. It was about moments like this, truth spoken, hearts exposed, and the choice to come back together. "Do you still love me?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost tender. Mia's gaze met his, raw and honest, and she nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Yes, I love you. I always have. I lost my way for a moment." Then she added something that made Ethan's heart catch. "Aaron wants to meet tomorrow. He says he needs closure. I haven't said yes, but I need to think about it." Ethan felt a twinge of anxiety again, realizing that the real challenge wasn't Aaron, it was their marriage. Their bond had been tested not by betrayal, but by distance, by the small cracks of silence and unspoken thoughts. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Before you decide anything about him, we need to decide us," he said softly. "We need to remember what we have and why it matters. If we don't, the space between us will only grow." Mia's eyes shimmered with tears, her lips trembling, and she squeezed his hand in return. "You're right," she whispered. I don't want to lose us over a mistake in listening." The sun shone brighter, illuminating the snow and casting long shadows across the porch, as if the world itself was witnessing their fragile honesty. Ethan realized that the moment wasn't about anger or blame, it was about understanding, forgiveness, and a choice to rebuild trust. Their hearts had been tested, and in the silence of that winter morning, they had chosen each other as they embraced. Not hurriedly, not passionately, but with quiet certainty. Ethan understood something profound. Love wasn't a perfect line. It was a journey through storms, confessions, fears, and truths. And in that soft, honest moment, he knew they were strong enough to face the future together. No matter the challenges ahead, the next day would bring questions and decisions. But for now, the hardest truth had been spoken. And Ethan finally felt a fragile hope that their love, though tested, could still grow stronger the next morning. Ethan woke early again, the house quiet except for the soft creak of floorboards and the hum of the heating. Snow covered the street outside, sparkling in the pale winter sunlight, and everything looked peaceful. But Ethan's mind was far from calm. After yesterday's conversation, he knew that the next hours would matter more than anything in weeks. Mia had mentioned Erin, and although nothing had happened, the fact that he wanted to meet her reminded Ethan that life could be fragile and love could be tested in unexpected ways. He needed to act, but not out of fear. He needed to act with care. Mia entered the kitchen, still nervous, still quiet, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. She gave him a small smile, but Ethan could see the hesitation behind it. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he watched her, noticing again the details he had taken for granted, the way her hair fell over her shoulders, the small crease in her forehead, the way her lips moved when she sipped coffee without thinking. Every detail reminded him why he loved her in the first place. And suddenly, he understood that love wasn't about avoiding fear. It was about choosing each other every day, even when the future was uncertain. He reached for her hand gently. "Before you think about meeting Erin," he said softly, "let's do something. Just you and me." Mia's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, a drive," he replied. "No phones. No distractions. Just us, like we used to." Mia paused, her lips trembling, then nodded. The decision was simple, but it felt like a small victory, a choice to focus on their marriage. Instead of outside distractions, they bundled up in coats and scarves and stepped into the crisp winter air. Ethan drove slowly, the engine humming, and the silence between them was comfortable. They didn't talk immediately. Instead, they watched the snow fall on the roadside trees and listened to the faint sound of distant birds. Slowly, Mia began to speak, telling him about little things she had been thinking about, worries she had kept inside, and moments where she had felt lonely or unheard. Ethan listened carefully, realizing how much distance had grown between them simply because they hadn't shared their thoughts in months. Ethan shared too, telling her about the worry the message had caused him, the fear he felt when he saw Erin's name, and the small doubts that had built up without either of them noticing. They spoke openly, honestly, without blaming, without raising voices, just as people exposing their hearts to each other. With every word, every shared memory, every quiet laugh at small mistakes, they slowly rebuilt the connection that had felt fragile. It was a gentle process, but it was powerful. And Ethan felt something shift inside him, a lightness, a warmth, a return to something he hadn't realized he was missing so deeply. When they returned home, Ethan watched as Mia picked up her phone. She paused for a moment, then typed a message to Erin. "I can't meet you. I need to focus on my marriage." She deleted his contact afterward, her hand lingering on the screen before she turned to Ethan. There was no pride in her gesture. No boast, just honesty, clarity, and the desire to protect what they had rebuilt. Ethan felt a quiet pride too, not in her act, but in the fact that she had chosen them, chosen love, chosen him. They spent the rest of the day together, talking, laughing, and even sitting in silence. sharing the simple comfort of presence. Ethan realized something important. Love didn't need grand gestures or dramatic moments to survive. It needed honesty, attention, and the courage to choose each other over distractions, over fear, over distance. He no longer feared the cracks in their relationship, because he knew that cracks could be repaired with care, attention, and patience. As night fell and the lights of their small home glowed warmly, Ethan and Mia sat together on the couch holding hands. There was no rush, no pressure, no dramatic declaration, just the gentle reassurance of two hearts finding their way back to each other. Ethan whispered softly, "We almost lost each other, but I'm glad we didn't." Mia rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes shining with tears and relief. "Me too," she said, and for the first time in weeks, everything felt safe again. Ethan thought about the message, about the fear, about the quiet tension that had filled their days. He realized that love wasn't about never being tested, it was about how they responded when they were. And as they held each other in the soft warmth of their home, Ethan knew that their love had grown stronger. The storm had passed, but it had left something better behind. A choice to stay, promise to communicate, and the quiet courage to love again, fully and honestly.